Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to this Think Ahead session arranged by ACCA. My name is Amir Salim, and I am representing ACCA as the Business Development Manager. So, first of all, let me just quickly give you a background about what the session is all about, and then we can quickly introduce the speaker as well as go through the presentation itself. So this Think Ahead session primarily is organized around the very basic principle of ACCA being the force for public good. We do engage with our employers, our partners, whereby we bring the knowledge and research insights that are primarily done at an extensive level by ACCA Global, and these then are converted into various research reports, and then they are brought to the employers for the betterment of the principles and policies that organizations adopt to improve the business trends and business continuity. So from here, I would like to introduce and welcome our speaker for today, whose name is Jamshed Hayat. Thank you, Jamshed, for sparing some time for us in delivering this session. So Jamshed primarily is a very senior fellow member at ACCA, and he has a diverse work experience around strategy, enterprise resource planning, finance transformation, business process improvement, and areas of business continuity and financial planning and all that. So I believe he definitely would be able to make us go through this exciting topic for today, ethics and trust in a digital age. Currently, he is working with PwC as a project manager, whereby he is a part of global risk management services at PwC. So thank you once again, and welcome all of you to this wonderful session. And I hope we'll be having key takeaways from the session going forward. Thank you, and over to you, Jamshed.
Thank you, Amir. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamshed Hayat, and like Amir introduced me already, I'm working as a project manager with PwC. And today the topic would be ethics and trust in a digital age. So there will be a two-sided role to my being over here. Number one would be that I'll be presenting the findings of the report which ACCA pioneered, and alongside with the collaboration of some of the leading chartered accountancy institutes and accountancy bodies all across the world with respect to how ethics and trust can be built within the digital age. So first of all, I'll be presenting you the research considerations and the research findings, survey findings, which ACCA drove out of this research, number one. But number two, predominantly my being over here, I'll try building on a few things in terms of my own experience, since I'm actively engaged in fintech consulting, and especially given this COVID-19, but immediately before that, and something which I realized long before, around a decade before, which is why I chose my current line of work within finance and technology transformations and business transformations. Why? Because I saw this coming. Of course, COVID has helped literally fast track digital transformations across the world, across businesses a lot, because earlier people were just talking about, organizations were just talking about digital transformations, and they were just treating it as a good to have feature, a mayor, for instance, something which they would see executive level suits. Everyone just knew that maybe that is the way forward. But immediately in the post COVID era, or the current era which is going on, people have been given a perspective. Organizations, employers, everyone now know that those organizations which had already embraced digital transformation to a certain extent across their value chain activities, across a lot of their functions, have benefited a lot, and their disruptions were with their operations were disrupted the least, to say. But those organizations categorically who were still contemplating on whether to go digital or not digital, the impact of technology, whether to adopt the digital age. Let's suppose the investments, they were still considering those investments, and the appraisals were going on. They all of a sudden were the most impacted. Their employees were reduced to working from home. Their operations were stuck. We have seen a lot of such organizations, especially in a country like Pakistan, where this adoption is we are far behind the rest of the world, at least the developed world. So we'll be talking about, so they were the ones who were disrupted the most. Their businesses were shut down. A lot of them had to lay off their employees as well. And so we'll be taking all of that into consideration. Since in my line of work, I was during this COVID period as well, predominantly when the first lockdown occurred, I was with one of the largest educational networks in Pakistan. I was provided them with consulting around the same domain. I wanted to transform their finance and business processes around financial activities in areas across Pakistan. So I know the impact, and especially since education was one of the hardest hit areas by COVID. So I know the hassles, the bustles. So I'll be giving you a little insight on that, and even towards the end, for instance, when we'll have question answer sessions, so I'll be taking in those questions. I'll be responding how, building on my experiences, some of the organizations out there, how they managed to cope up. So all in all, I guess without further ado, let me just first of all start with the survey, the report itself, and I'll take it on from over there. Ahmed, do I have? Yes, I have the control. All right. Yeah. So, like I said, the report itself is structured around the theme is basically ethics and trust in a digital age, number one. So, this was predominantly the survey was done keeping this in mind, how employers, how professional accountants, how employees of those organizations view ethics and trust in a digital age, their role in a digital age, how important they are, the perceptions of, let's suppose, C-level it suits. For them, what does ethics and trust mean? Number one, for them, how do they see whether professional accountants are up to the task, whether they are ethical? And similarly, with respect to professional accountants themselves, so one of the so few of the research considerations which were kept in mind while conducting this survey were, number one, in terms of future looking, some of the ethical considerations that are new and emergent in the evolving digital age. Number two, uh, the ethical challenges, for instance, provided or posed by the ongoing technological revolution. Number one, so I'll try limiting the stance just to the ethical and trust related because that's the theme. I will be, to some extent, I'll try highlighting a little light on the other considerations, of course, when it comes to digital technology, some of the insecurities which both the employers have, the employees have across site, but the real world situations, for instance, some of the digital themes, like I said, building on my experience in my current line of work, which is finance and technology consulting, I'll try coming up with a few themes specific in which I felt predominantly across industries and across those digital operations, I feel a lot of people faced a lot of challenges. And number three, of course, the global perspective. So one of the considerations which was kept was that, whatever we come across, it shouldn't just be specific to the target market. So ACCA not just conducted this particular survey, keeping in view, let's suppose, the Pakistani market, but took a global perspective out of it. So what helps is, since the primarily goal of technology is to put your organization on a map where it can start growing and start reaping the advantages of a digital world. So for instance, it makes a lot of sense to bring you guys the perspective of what other people across boundaries, across cultures, for instance, in other organizations, markets, how their professional accountants, how their C-suite level of executives, for instance, they feel about ethics and trust in a digital age. Some of the stats were around 10,000 professional accountants were surveyed, including 500 plus C-suite leaders across 150 countries wherever ACCA has presence. Yeah. So moving on, the support which ACCA received was from the following organizations, and ACCA collaborated with these organizations, bodies such as IFAC, such as IESBA, and together they drew up, for instance, the recommendations, which we'll be even discussing at the end, towards the end of the report. What are some of the considerations? What are some of the recommendations which will be which IESBA, for instance, which ACCA feel needs to be forwarded to the employers, which will help them understand a bit more about ethics and transformation. And as Amir said, for instance, it will help them align their ethics and trust and their internal policies and procedures, controls around this within their organization. A bit about the report structure, for instance, the values were considered, the importance of ethics and trust in a digital age, yes, but there's some of the fundamental values which even ACCA progresses. So let's suppose one of them or few of them being the integrity, the objectivity. Now, these are some of the values which professional accountants adhere to. We have this as part of our core curriculum, whether we be from any professional accountancy body. So since I have done ACCA, so I can relate to it. One of or five of those professional competencies or values which ACCA and otherwise IESBA adhere pretty strict or are matlab, we even in our CPD annual declarations, for instance, even otherwise across the year, calendar year around, there are multiple seminars, there are multiple events which ACCA hosts emphasizing the importance of integrity, objectivity, some of these values, professional competence, and due care. Now, this is again an area which I like to deliberate a little more upon, especially given the digital age, the work we do, and in my line of work as well, it's a little different to what we have studied traditionally, for instance. It takes advantage of those roots, those core understandings of accounting standards, auditing standards, and the basic accounting and finance, yes, but then we have to actually plug in the technology component, the digital part, whereby my the other line of work to finance is the technology component, whereby the leading enterprise solutions and their providers, for instance, they come into place, their solutions, how, because businesses have moved away from let's suppose asking accountants to give them everything on an Excel, and now they want us, especially the consultants, to, yes, there is a problem, they understand, not just highlight the problem but also give the solution, and the solution should not be of a nature whereby a lot of manual work is needed, but it should be a kind of a more of a self-automated autonomous solution. And of course, they are looking for a technological solution. So it could be with any of the providers, but they want to leverage on the technology of the leading technology at the moment. It could be in terms of blockchain technology, it could be the AI, it could be the enterprise resource planning as a suite businesses, let's suppose, dependent upon, it could be the customer relation management systems, for instance, in place, whereby they want to drive efficiencies from those softwares. Hence, coming back to the point, so that value of professional competence and due care would come into play as well. And accountants, professional accountants, especially in this age, need to be adept on such concepts, on such technologies. And so I'll try elaborating a bit more about it. But the report structure then moves on, discuss about experiences. So I'll predominantly, again, like I said, I'll talk a few of my experiences, try giving few insights. I've over the span of the last decade, I've serviced across um, around 30 plus employers across four geographies within Southeast Asia, South Asia, Europe, Middle East extensively, and Europe extensively. I've also held leadership positions in major telco companies in Europe and Pakistan. So I'll try building on those experiences, multicultural, multilingual, multi cross boundaries where the time zones are different. So all of those challenges, I'll try building a few on them, and when I'll try relating them to the ethics and trust again. We'll talk about application, like I said. We'll take all of those experiences. We'll see how we can apply within the context of our organizations. And of course, there are certain responsibilities which come alongside attached to it. We'll look into that and the support which can be provided. So based on this report structure, let's just move on. So this was the report structure which ACCA followed and which I'll be presenting to you in a very chronological manner. So based on this, first of all, I'll be moving onwards to the next slide, which talks about the values itself, the impact of digital on ethics. Uh, These are hard stats, for instance. It's on display for each and every one. I'll just try walking you through those. So, when it comes to ethical principles and behaviors, for instance, how much importance should we attach to them? How important do C-level executives think they are? How important do professional accountants think that they are? When we talk about, again, when we talk about strong ethical principles and behavior. So in blue, you have the responses of C-suite executives' perspective on professional accountants and how do they feel professional accountants are when it comes to following ethical behaviors, practices, and principles. So if we look into the this raw stats itself, we have um, the strongly agree, the agree option, for instance, and the don't know, disagree. So these are the five metrics, and predominantly when we talk about the strongly agree and the agree metrics, we have the bulk of responses there, where around 44.3% of the C-suite executives and 60.1% of the professional accountants responded that they themselves or the C-suite executives feel that yes, professional accountants do have strong ethical principles and behavior. And one of the reasons for that again is because, of course, again relating to ACCA itself, as part of my studies, as part of the ongoing membership process, whereby we have to every year we have to submit a declaration, and then since it's a regulated profession as well within Pakistan, there are aspects such as auditing, which is very much regulated. There are very high stake services such as taxation services, and of course there is a my side to it whereby the responsibility itself is huge, tremendous. We actually, in my line of work, for I am a part of a team. I'm a part of an organization on the projects. I'm the one who is. I'm personally an advisor to the board level, board of directors, for instance, to whichever organizations I go. I try advising them on the structures. The organizational structure. So, for instance, like I said, during the COVID period, I myself was advising the board of directors of a leading educational enterprise across Pakistan and one of the multinationals in the world. So, I was advising their board of directors how to go about structuring their financial and business activities. So, what I'm trying to say is the amount of work which consultants do, which auditors do, which taxations, everything, these are high stake areas, and the responsibility is huge. So again, it's fundamental, it's core that we as professional accountants should have strong ethical behavior. We should have those values which I talked about earlier and which I'll deliberate a little more on. And it's important that the employers see it that way. So just to reiterate again, based on my qualifications, one of the reasons why my current organization, PwC, has hired me, keeps sending me to other areas, geographies, for instance, and their organizations place trust on, yes, my organization, and in de facto on my professional body as well, is because we adhere, they have a very strong guidelines, they have very strong procedures whereby they ensure compliance by their members of ethical principles and behaviors, and the ramifications of discourse are great. So I can very well end up losing whatever I've worked for, studied, struggled for throughout my life on the basis of, let's suppose, misconduct, on the basis of acting with lack of integrity and lack of honesty. So, anything can get reported back to me. And I feel this is one of the reasons why a lot of employers place a lot of importance on professional accountants, which are regulated by bodies such as ACCA, over and above, let's suppose, people who do not have such regulated bodies behind them. So anyway, coming back to the point, so like I was saying, it's paramount, it's fundamental that and it's good that C-level suits of some of the leading organizations across the world also place a very high level reliance on professional accountants and their um ethical principles and behaviors. And one of the reasons why this is of even more importance is now because during the COVID age, this period, all of the organizations have gone digital. Those who haven't have really literally shut down their operations. They cannot, or either, of course, the other side could be they are not following the SOPs. Government stated SOPs, but barring those few organizations, any organization of repute has gone digital, and if it hasn't, it has shut its operations for the time being. And given the time period, initially it was about a month or so. Now everyone, after 6 months into the pandemic, felt that they cannot survive any longer with their operations closed. They need to go digital or go home. So it becomes even more important now that accountants address or act with an ethical behavior. So the impact of digital on ethics is fundamental. It's of a paramount nature, number one. And which brings me to my next point. And of course, the next slide would be the trust factor, the link between the ethics and trust, and the trust factor which is there. Yeah. Ahmed, somehow I cannot change my, yeah, I cannot shift the slide. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Ji,
Hmm. I had
Jamshed, can you
control.
move the slide? I believe you can move. Can you just click on the mouse?
Okay, so
It's
I
not
just need
working.
to click on
Yeah,
switch.
it's working. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Great. Yeah, so I was saying this brings me to my next point, that is the link which is there between ethics and trust. One of the key features why, of course, bodies such as ACCA, why employers emphasize so much on ethics is that trust factor. Now, I cannot stress upon it much. Trust is paramount and of a fundamental importance for anything. So, for instance, people just do not want to do business with people who they cannot rely upon, who they cannot trust upon. Yeah. With that being said, for instance, hence it was a very important metrics of this report as well to figure out the extent to which respondents agree that ethics helps to build trust. And of course, like I said, the figures show that around, again, strongly, if I just focus on the strongly agree quotient, around 63% of the professional accountants and 42% of the C-suite executives feel that yes, ethics has a fundamental role to play while building trust, and only a minute figure of around 4.2% and 6% of the people feel that strongly disagree with this notion. Of course, they could have they're entitled to their own opinion. In my own personal opinion as well, ethics is fundamental in building trust. If you do not act in an ethical way, of course nobody will trust you. It's as simple as that. And if nobody wants can trust you, for instance, nobody will want to do business with you. I have practically seen in my organization, of course, as well, and in my current role, I am involved with leading large teams, my own teams, who are, of course, a group of consultants as well, 25, 30-member teams of varied skill set, experiences, backgrounds, with a mix of technology and chartered accountants, MBA professionals. So I get to, and of course, they are from multiple backgrounds themselves in terms of regions all across Pakistan and otherwise. So I feel if, and I've felt this my way as well, I tend to rely more on upon those people who act in a very ethical way, who act, of course, with responsibility, and there are some other metrics to that as well. They take work-related responsibilities. They're well groomed. They're well polished. They can speak, yes, etc. Those metrics are still there. But when it comes to ethics, I want from my team members, and this is something which I advocate a lot, actively advocate a lot, is that the worst, and this is one, in fact, one of the mantras which is used within my organization. It's that the worst mistake that you can make is the one which you do it on your own, or you make on your own. You need to collaborate, and for you to collaborate, you to reach out to people, it's important that you act in an ethical way. Otherwise, after one or two encounters, nobody will want to collaborate with you, work with you. It's important for me in my role that I need to place a high level of trust on my team members. The kind of projects I'm scaling, they're huge projects, around $1 million at least worth of projects, for instance, a $500,000 worth of projects. There are so many facets to those projects, for instance. There are so many operations. I cannot just look after each and every side on my own. I need to be able to place trust in my team members, individual pillars, my team leads, for instance. I need to be able to do that if I were to successfully deliver this project and wrap it up. And I cannot do that if, let's suppose, within my team, professionals are coming to me whether they are technology professionals or professional accountants, since I get to have a mix of both, and they're not ethical. It could be a very simple thing as, let's suppose, a person lying to take a day off, to take a morning off, person coming up, and this is something which we see a lot. First time I held a people management role was back in 2013. I still remember, and that is the first time I got to experience. I always used to feel that people management is something which is like it's always a very under rated profession. It's always something which a lot of people do not really um, realize the kind of responsibilities, the pressures which come along with that, and how you need to act always as a bigger person. Yeah. And of course, you try placing trust on your resources, but then there are some things. It could be very simple, as a person, let's suppose, if he has just gotten up late, he overslept, for instance, and he is using some form of excuse to cover up for that inefficiency, let's suppose, on his behalf. And if he shows up an hour late, 2 hours late, takes half a morning off, I tell them two things: a, be clear to me; number two, inform me. Yeah. So if you are not communicating with me, that is where I have issues. I need to know where you are. As long as you're telling me, I don't care. For instance, if you take the full day off, I just need to know. In my line of work, again, like I'll reiterate, and this is something which is a very positive side of technology, and then it comes with its own challenge, again related to ethics and trust, is that, and especially catapulted by COVID-19, all of my team, almost all of my team, is working from home, is dispersed across Pakistan at different locations. So naturally, they are not under the same roof. I cannot control. So the people management itself becomes a big challenge. And of course, when you have such strict deadlines as the ones we have in consulting, so it becomes a lot of, it becomes very, we have a few very high stakes, pressured environment situations. So, like I said again, I need to be able to trust my employees. If someone is sitting in, let's suppose, if I'm sitting in Karachi and someone is sitting in Islamabad, I cannot monitor him. It's okay if he woke up at 11 or 12, for instance. I don't care. What I care about is that if I've given him a task, for instance, he should be able to accomplish it. I cannot monitor him from 9 to 5, which, let's suppose, in your organizations, if people are coming to one location, you can. But of course, again, like I said, with COVID, with work from home environment now becoming the norm, again, your people managers, you guys yourselves cannot monitor it. So again, ethics and trust forms the core of it. If your resources are ethical, if they themselves, without the bosses saying, matlab, let's suppose if a resource nonetheless while working from home shows up, gets online at 9:30, 9:30, which is the regular office time, for instance, and then takes a sharp off at 5, 5:36 or log, you'll naturally hold him in high regard. You'll naturally be able to trust him more. And of course, when it comes to promotions, when it comes to giving him pressured or her pressured assignments, roles, tasks, responsibilities, so he'll be the natural one to go. So again, with respect to the link between ethics and trust, it's good, and it's a finding that a lot of people feel that ethics helps bring the trust, and I guess this is a positive omen. Moving on, if we just take into this perspective, the C-suite executives perspective, they think that the accountant's ethical behavior helps organizations build trust with internal and external stakeholders. So I've emphasized on it a lot already. Being a professional, for instance, who has these roles, for instance, is in these situations, and of course, all of those, hopefully, all of you have been in such environments. Whoever has held a people management role, you guys have faced these challenges with your employees. Have Some of you might have overcome it, some of you might not have overcome it. For some, it's still ongoing. There's You guys are still exploring how to. I feel again, this is a journey which should have started a long time ago. I was part of an organization before my current organization as well. I was a part of the organization which was actively advocating work from home culture. And this is something they were doing back in 2013, 14, 15. Yeah. And There was no sign of COVID. Work from home was a luxury. It was something which was touted as a positive key factor and was helping get them a lot of top talent resources, recruit top talent resources. Now, if you're not working from home or you're not allowing your resources to work from home, you cannot survive. Yeah, so now it's a necessity. And when it becomes such, again, the role of ethics, the ethical behavior, for instance, and similarly, your internal stakeholders would be your own colleagues, for instance, the way I was mentioning, you need to be direct, you need to be communicative, and you need to be honest. Yeah. And then when it comes to external shareholders or stakeholders, there are a lot of roles, for instance, which require interaction with external components. That is where it becomes even more crucial. A lot of professional accountants, such as myself, I am involved in an organization in a line of work where I actively have to uh, interact with my clients from all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of industries, for instance. And my role is not just limited to interaction between my internal colleagues or with my internal colleagues, it actually has a very forward customer centric approach. Hence, it's all the more important for a person or professional such as myself to be able to build trust. Significant extent, just a second, yeah. Um, Again, like I said, acting in public interest, for instance, is something which was another metrics of this report. And this survey was: do accountants feel that they themselves, do they believe that they are taking care or they're acting in a way that they're acting in the best interest of the external stakeholders, the public at large? Now, again, I'll try reiterating. A lot of organizations, for instance, has this as the part of their core manifesto, of course, because whoever is in business in a client centric role, they'll know without trust you cannot get business. Without business you cannot take care of your own, of course, operations, and you won't really have a job at the end of the day, you won't really have a business at the end of the day. Yeah, so that forms a core part. Being a professional accountant, what does it relate to? Do professional accountants themselves believe that they are acting in the public interest? So again, the response of both the employed and the unemployed, for instance, is again tilted towards yes, they mostly feel that they are acting in the public interest. And I would like to again reiterate why a lot of people have this as a metric is because of the qualifications we have been through. Again, like I said, being a member of the ACCA body, at least I can vouch for it. It becomes part of our course. It is something which is taught to us both in classroom, at work, and on the ongoing CPD is one of the key components as well. It's a metrics, for instance, as part of our CPD. There are a lot of seminars around this, something a seminar such as this as well, whereby we are reminded again and again to introspect ourselves, see, ask ourselves, are we acting in the public interest, and the advantages and the disadvantages, or the pros and the cons of this. If we do, how will it be beneficial for us and the organization and the environment, public community at large? If we don't, how will it impact everyone, including ourselves? So we'll be the ones who will end up getting hurt the most. So, like I said, again, one of the key advantages of again being associated with one of the professional bodies who do not just hand you a qualification, for instance, but who also take charge of how your career is building. ACCA has formed a very fundamental part of my, at least, build up career for the past 1 decade. And again, so mostly professional accountants, if we talk about them, this is an important metric. Moving back to the fundamental principles, the values which I was earlier talking about, they are IESBA principles as well. When we talk about ethics in a digital age, we need to realize that, in essence, our way of working has changed. The importance of trust ethics has become of extreme, of a paramount importance, yes, but the core fundamentals, they never change. They never changed almost throughout time. Since inception, some of the principles, hardcore principles of honesty, of professionalism, of integrity, of objectivity, these are all something These are all the things which have been taught to us. These have been key drivers in the success of an organization, in the success of individuals throughout times, not just the COVID times, not just in the digital age, but throughout. However, with the digital age, like I mentioned earlier as well, trying to introspect in my own line of work, and especially in the current situation where employees are working from home, where bosses, where managers have to, take go the extra mile in order to do people management. I have a very common saying: you can do half of your people management literally on at a lunch table during the lunch hour. For instance, if you're interacting with your colleagues, with your subordinates, for instance, you're hearing them out. What are their challenges? What are their aspirations? What do they? So you can do half of your literally people management. Even I will take the liberty of going on to say that you can do three-fourths of that literally on lunch times, during coffee breaks, for instance, with random discussions. You do not really have to hold separate sessions for them. But given the COVID period, you cannot just do those, right? So again, coming back to the integrity, objectivity, and of course the professional competence and due care, which I was talking about, managers now have to go the extra mile in order to exercise their people management duties. Number one, when it comes to work, when it comes to functional managers who are responsible for the work of their colleagues, who are responsible for delivering deadlines, they're expecting two things. Number one, I've seen this firsthand being within the education sector as well during the COVID period, advising them. I've seen it firsthand how teachers, how employees struggled to adopt technology. And I don't mean technology such as AI, blockchain technology, coding. No, I don't mean advanced solutions where we have to properly train them and then no. I mean they had difficulty in accessing links on Zoom, in firing up webinar meetings, Zoom meetings, cloud meetings, for instance. They had difficulty to on this level, and this is okay. This was a transition which most of them were always avoiding. They just always thought, most of them always thought that they'll never be put into a position where this will become the norm and they'll have to adopt. We can talk about elderly people as well. We can talk about, of course, in business. We can talk about junior most people, of course, with age. If you're talking about young professionals, they're already a lot of very adept with technology. But most of these organizations, you have to understand, have users which are between the ages of 40 to nearing 60. For them, it was a major shift. And so again, when it comes to such principles as professional competence and due care, professional behavior, we need to make sure, accountants need to make sure, yes, they are still keeping themselves abreast with the recent developments, challenges of the time. They're investing time in educating themselves on these two technologies. And so the metrics was, how do these principles still stay relevant? So around 94% of the respondents stated that yes, these principles are still relevant as ever in the digital age as well. And the fact that integrity, objectivity, and confidentiality over and above has become even more. So, just a key example before moving on to the next slide would be around confidentiality. In my line of work, again, I'm trying to take an example because this fits perfectly. In my line of work, we are handling sensitive client information. Within our organization, since I have my official laptop, I'm not allowed to use a USB. It has USB ports, but it does not work. Of course, everything is controlled. Any document which I email from this particular system gets tracked, gets audited. So confidentiality within the organization, of course, since I am in this line of work, they've tried ensuring all of such internal controls and they rigorously maintain it, and it's a non-forgivable offense. So, for instance, if established that you have acted with less than due care, for instance, you end up losing a job. It's very simple. It's part of the contract. It's part of this. However, when we talk about other areas, other industries, other employers, not a lot of other companies are that lay a lot of emphasis on the technology component themselves. However, I feel again it's of something which is of utmost relevance. It's good that a lot of people feel that this metric still applies, and will continue to do so. Moving on to the experiences section, I've tried stating a lot of my experiences alongside, so I'll just try skimming through some of the facts and stats which are there. Respondents who in the previous 12 months experienced pressure to compromise their ethical principles, they were around 19% of those respondents. However, the ones who did not were around no. So I'll just try putting it in layman terms. Behaving in an ethical way is always a choice. Not a lot of lines of work, for instance, a lot of lines of business, not a lot organizations, most of the people aren't really in kind of a position where they can be coerced into behaving in an unethical way. And if they are, they always have a choice. The choice is to always say no. They always have a choice. Yes, there could be a backlash. There could be a risk of their bosses, managers getting, let's suppose, sidelining them. They could run a risk of, let's suppose, losing their jobs. Maybe. However, this is always a choice. Number one. But number two, most importantly, I feel this is also a self-driven. Ethics is not just, let's suppose, um manipulating on dinner vouchers, for instance, fraudulent activities, fraudulent window dressing of financial statements, for instance, etc., etc. It's petty corruption, major level corruption. No, ethics or unethical behavior could very well be taking extended coffee breaks during paid time. So let's suppose you're paid by your organization from 9 to 5. It's a paid official time, right? If you are at home, let's suppose, and especially within the office as well, but especially at home, if you're taking extended lunch break, during the office you have an extended lunch break, you have a lunch break of around 1 hour, yeah, but at home you're taking it around 2 hours, so you're of course behaving in an unethical way. You are taken in another hour which should have gone to the organization's related tasks and works and duties because you are getting paid for that. So it could be very well starting from this, and of course you can extrapolate it to extended coffee breaks, extended discussions which have absolutely no relevance. A lot of people use social media on job and use it a lot, which needlessly takes away another. For instance, we all know how distracting, how addictive it gets. For instance, needlessly takes away another hour. So these are all minor unethical behaviors, but of course at the end of the day they impact your performance a lot as well. Yeah. So in the last month, 1 in 5 exposed to an ethical challenge. Of those, 2 in 5 did not report it. Now this is another important component which is of paramount importance. Being able to report them, have that moral courage to report it. For some organizations, they have very strong HRs, they have independent processes to report it without disclosing your identity. Yes, but a lot of organizations do not have such routes. For them, again, it's fundamental to build such routes so they can, so such behavior gets reported timely before the organization itself runs a risk of public exposure. But predominantly, even so, it's good that yeah, it's good that a lot of organizations, for instance, clients, when we talk about that, they observe that compromised ethics at their own organizations or a chart, organizations themselves and the clients. They have kept around 19 to 24% percentages where they feel yes, the compromise was there at some point in time. So the acknowledgement is there. Right now, I guess one of the key things around policy making, which organizations who do not have independent lines of work, these reporting channels for public, for their employees, I'm sorry, to report such behaviors, they do not have distressed lines, dedicated distressed lines. They need to establish such. Uh, Moving on from there, from here, around 59%, if I Yeah, so around 59% reported the incident in which they had experienced pressures to compromise their ethical behaviors, whereas 41% stated that yes, nothing as such happened or occurred. Yeah. However, again, like I said, ethics is always a choice. Acting in an unethical manner is always a choice. It's a personal choice. If someone is being coerced, they can always say no. However, from an organizational perspective, which is the agenda for today's meeting, it's paramount, it's essential that organizations who currently have them, excellent, who do not have such distressed lines of channel for independent reporting of such behaviors, they need to establish it. Uh, Moving on to the next part, where we state that ethical principles that were compromised in a situation that was personally experienced or observed. Of course, integrity is something which is personal. Most of the times, it is this that gets compromised a lot, and hence this was part of our finding as well. And from an organizational perspective, I believe I'll reiterate my earlier point. Being an employer, we need to establish such independent channels. We need to give our employees uh, this route whereby they can comfortably report unethical behaviors, such coercion by their immediate line managers, for instance, to an independent HR person or a professional who can take care of this. I know in my organization it's done very strictly. I'm working for a multinational organization, so such organizations have a lot of other multinational operations across Pakistan have such practices. A lot of large-scale organizations, medium-sized enterprises also have such practices. But when we talk about small businesses, things get murky. Such lines of work usually do not have. A lot of times, professional accountants are end up getting coerced by the owner himself. I believe that is where this becomes more of a personal choice. However, if we talk about the stats itself, the second, with integrity being the first most, the second one being the professional behavior with a little shortfall, or with a little with objectivity following closely behind. However, confidentiality, which is a silver lining in itself, yes, it was compromised, yes, but eventually confidentiality is, I feel, the least compromised, or sorry, not I feel, it's as per the stats, the least compromised. There's a silver lining to it. However, there is a need to curtail this as well. From an organizational perspective, I feel there needs to be even stricter controls around the confidentiality of the data, around the repercussions which employees need to be made aware of. That, for instance, so in my organization, I'm very well aware if I even by mistake, for instance, if I unintentionally have managed to act in a way whereby I have compromised a very critical client related information outside. Let's suppose it could be over a random discussion with a friend on a dinner table. I know the consequences of that. So I feel that, this is a metrics which needs to be counted for. But the other metrics which I personally feel is something which both employers and professional accountants need to do a lot, is around professional competence and due care. So while 33% do believe that within this realm domain ethical principles were compromised, yeah, I feel that there's a lot that needs to be done around this area categorically, of course, after integrity, to help reduce compromises around this area, because a compromise around this area affects both the employee and the employer, and more so employer gets stuck with a resource who isn't really uh, around this realm domain, who isn't really professionally competent maybe. Yeah, since ethics were, I'll just try giving a little example just to further my point, use an analogy over here. If in an organization there are certain requirements of, let's suppose, for employees, some organizations mandate their employees to pursue professional certifications and qualifications. But at the end of the year, an employee randomly submits a fake certificate, so we can all see the consequences of that. We have an example of a crashed airline whereby it was exposed that, within that airline there were a lot of professional pilots with dubious licenses. So, such things, ethical compromises in such an area whereby your professional competence puts the organization, puts other people's lives, their businesses at risk. And this is a major concern. So I feel being an organization, there needs to be a very well checked balance around this behavior as well. And there should not be, from on an individual level as well, compromises around some of these areas. Quickly moving onwards, I have time consideration in my mind as well. I am 10 minutes running late. 2 and 3 C-suite executives cite need for improving digital readiness of accountants. Yeah, some improvement. Uh, yeah, Some improvement will be required, yes. So around 53% of the people reported such, and I believe this is fair. And it might, in fact, be a little underrated because or underreported because I feel the room for improvement is always there. No professional accountant, least of all the ones in professional consulting, such as myself, because we are the go-tos for organizations. Yeah, so you can end up hiring a professional accountant, yes, but then you'll always need after some time that professional accountant will not be as adept or as sharp as he used to be while working for a company or in a role such as myself, because we are continuously being exposed to different situations across different organizations, industries, in different timed situations. There's a lot of research element to it. So while it is a mandatory requirement for me to keep abreast with the uh, upcoming uh, technologies and with upcoming development, for instance, least of all digital readiness, it's not it's not automatically emphasized for others, and not automatically there are not a lot of people who literally take this as their number one agenda goal, self development goal for the year, and I believe this is where more improvement needs to come from. Around 15% felt that there's a significant improvement required. Of course, this is again an area where it's a link, it's a role which employers can play as well. Some organizations mandate their employees to pursue such certifications, which continuously keeps them up to date with recent developments and their own skill set, and they realize the importance and they bear the cost of it as well. They reimburse, right, the expenses incurred by employees for such certifications. Yes, right? But there are a lot of organizations which don't, and a lot of initiative has to be taken by the employee, and he keeps saying. So I feel in my organization, just to give an example, my organization reimburses my membership fee for the professional bodies such as ACCA, and against that membership fee, I get throughout the year a lot of content for my own personal development, CPD resources, for instance, which I can help, which I read up. It helps me professionally as well as my organization. So such measures need to be there. Uh, Moving on, if we talk about the application, um, how does we apply ethics and basically having that ethical lens, right, to digital themes? That is an area which needs a lot of deliberation. So, for instance, if we talk about a few of the digital themes, we can talk about cybersecurity, we can talk about uh, platform-based business models, for instance. Amir, is there any way that these can be zoomed in? I'll
I believe these would be explained later in the later part. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll just, for those of you who cannot see it, I'll just state it out loud. So some of the digital themes around which we'll discuss ethics would be cybersecurity, platform-based business models, big data and analytics. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, cryptocurrencies, and we'll be talking about artificial intelligence, we'll be talking about AI, we'll be talking about artificial intelligence, we'll be talking about automation, we'll be talking about machine learning, and of course, at the end of the day, the digital theme will be around the procurement of technology. Yeah, so there are a lot of digital themes, which, of course, fundamentals, other reports, other areas would be addressing surveys around them. However, if we talk about ethics around these digital themes, so I'll just try giving one example. Can we move back? Amir, can you just revert to the previous slide? Let me see. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So if we just try emphasizing the importance of ethics around these areas, I'll just state this one thing. When we talk about platform-based business models, we talk about cybersecurity, such as the one which is, of course, in my line of work. When we deploy technological solutions, it could be CRM solutions, enterprise resource planning solutions, it could be around certain models, for instance, or technologies which facilitate analysis, financial analysis. Uh, ethics play down right into it. There are internal controls, yes, we build, but of course the ethical component around this would be to recommend our clients in my line of work, our clients with the recent technologies. Um, I'll just give you one personal example over here. So in my one of the previous assignments in which I was engaged. So we earlier locked on a scope. Of course, since we were implementing a technological solution, so though they have versions, right? So we were implementing a solution at this giant multinational organization, and the one which we agreed upon, the solution which we agreed upon, by the time we were in the process of deploying that, there was a newer version which was released by the organization. Now, even though that was not part of the scope, even though the client did not know that a newer version has been released, but we internally did a pros and cons analysis. How much effort, of course, in terms of our time, but how much advantage would our client get if we go for a newer version? Because there's no point implementing a version and then leaving an organization when all of a sudden a newer version has come in. So it will be de facto implementing an older version for them. So without their knowledge, of course, eventually they would have come to know of this. Someone else might have told them somewhere down the lane. So at the time, the ethical decision was, me and my partner, which we made, was yes, we need to go ahead with it. Now the backlash of that entire thing was, or let's suppose the cost of that decision was huge. We actually had to undo the work which we had been doing for the past 2 weeks, so 2 months, and something which we were adept on, we already knew. And we actually had to take on a new set of technologies and work on those. Our IT had to work on those, and it took another 2 months. So, for instance, the entire cost of that period of resource engagement, everything, we bore to ourselves. But the point was to behave in an ethical way, recommend the best technology, even though initially the versioning, it was a very minor change, but something which enhanced the customer experience, user experience. So when we talk about these technologies, we talk about especially the procurement of technology. There are so many versions, for instance, and they keep changing. um, like Amir said, these will be discussed at length later on. Moving on to ethical hackers, and who are they? For instance, ethical hacking as a discipline itself has gained a lot of traction. For starters, we talk about ethical hackers. They are the ones, for those of you who might not already be aware, they are the ones who actually hack into a software, hack into an information system. If we take the example of Facebook, an ethical hacker would be someone who would hack into someone's account and then report it to Facebook and then tell them that this is the route I took, and we need to build a security around this route so that other people cannot hack it through this route. Yeah. So in order to test the effectiveness of the perimeter security, yeah, so it's kind of a penetration testing. Um, why are we discussing ethical hackers over here? And so basically, it's of paramount importance. In order to, they say that in order to hack, in order to catch a leak, or in order to catch a thief, you have to think like a thief, right? So it's the same way. Um, there are within the digital age, you will have hackers, for instance, who are sophisticated, who have much more, let's suppose, knowledge, or have much more efficiency, effectiveness, much more qualification, experience than your own IT departments within the organization. The firewalls you build might be penetrable to those particular hackers. So effectively or continuously investing in your technologies to make them more foolproof, fireproof, to make them more uh, less prone to, of course, hackers. It's something which is a cost which the digital age, which comes with this digital age, but something which is of paramount importance. The role of professional accountants again would be to uh, emphasize the importance of such, because a lot of professional accountants in these organizations are dealing with these high-end solutions, resource solutions, enterprise planning solutions, whereby such securities are required. And especially given COVID, a lot of the organizations who earlier had desktop models, whereby employees had a station on their within their cubicle in their offices, and outside of that organizational local area network, they could not access it from home. Only a few set of individuals had access to it through their personal laptops or on their cell phones. But now it's an inevitable thing. Everyone has to do it and do it from home. So this is another area which was important. There are a few examples When we talk about a large company, it's primarily concerned about, of course, weaknesses within their network security, right, and the unofficial access to their sensitive data. So, I being again an individual who implements technological solutions, fintech solutions for clients, um, we do build firewalls. We do hire our IT to build firewalls because, of course, anyone who can then access those information systems can access the privileged, sensitive information of the client over the web if there are no security protocols, and they can penetrate inside and meddle with the organization's financials, right? So, uh, to go beyond traditional security products and routine surveillance, now again, this is where the job of an ethical hacker is created, right? Or, of course, someone of a similar background, companies provide such services where they can test the efficacy of your ethical walls as well. This is quite simple in another example whereby the ethical hacker would start going about do his work. For instance, he'll collaborate with partner companies, larger organizations. He'll try building your foolproof uh, information security so that you know your organization foolproof. And this is the need of the hour as well. To avoid inconvenience, employee at a partner company wrote a simple script that sends fake order every 14 minutes. So we were talking about phishing, we're talking about compromises to a large company and then deletes it. So remaining permanently logged on. What impact does that has is, but due to script error, fake orders do not always get deleted, right? Why are these examples even there? Because of course, at the end of the day, we are concerned about information security. We are concerned about identifying leaks. And why hire an ethical hacker? Because of such instances, whereby he'll predominantly help your organization. Um, why have this been included? I believe, let me just try structuring it, addressing it from this angle. Why has this component been included as part of this report? Is because in this digital age, for organizations, for employers, it's important to have foolproof information security systems. Employees will be accessing such information systems from home, from wherever location they are currently located in. A way of working has changed. The environment has radically changed in this COVID period or post COVID. Hence, it's the need of the time. Earlier, it might have looked like as an undue expense. However, now it's the need of the hour. For those organizations who continue to be skeptical around this, continue to expose themselves to potential exposures of a magnificent, of a much greater magnitude later on. But for those and a lot of multinational organizations, at least the ones I have consulted, large organizations, medium enterprises, we advise them. A lot of them do it proactively, preemptively. A lot of them do it on our advice. Again, something which ACCA through this report it's finding as well is something it's trying to emphasize a lot. Um this is a basic questionnaire. I would like to, the gist of it is something which I've already stressed upon, so I'll just try skimming through this one. If we talk about professional competence and due care, we'll would want to say that you know it's emerging as a key within this report as well. It states that you know this is something which is uh, a major principle which is at a risk of exposure, which is at a risk of compromise within this digital age throughout the digital themes we discussed. So, predominantly in layman terms, if we talk about the role of a professional accountant with respect to AI, with respect to, let's suppose, automation, robotics process automation, with respect to, let's suppose, procurement of technology. So, you know, these are some of the areas which traditionally professional accountants have not been well taught on, have not been, if I'll say, mm, very extensively, these are not some of the areas where they have a lot of readiness. So, again, when this is an area which has basically come off as a major risk area during these digital themes. So around 33% more weightage, of course, to the risk of compromise of professional competence in due care. And these are some of the testimonials of individuals working in different enterprises all across the world as to why they feel professional competence is there. And I've emphasized the role of this as well. Professional competence, when we talk about that, again comes to how readily accountants adopt technology. Those of us who have, those of the organizations, in fact, who have moved on, have survived this pandemic, continue to thrive, right? Those who haven't have shut their operations, are lurking, are now moving in a very painfully ordealist way, but they're now moving ahead. Yeah. Finally, if we talk about responsibilities and the support part, if we talk about how accountants can contribute. So again, something which I've emphasized a lot, and the report finds that upholding code of ethics is one way how professional accountants can contribute to their organization's ability to uphold ethics. Number one is that everyone does their own task, does their own tiny bit of piece, right? Number two, reporting an ethical behavior. 56% of the respondents feel that if they report an ethical behavior, they're doing justice to their organization, and that's a good omen. It's a little less. It's a lot less. In fact, it should have been around, ideally around the 90th quartile percentile, 99th percentile, but still, uh, like I said, there are challenges around reporting and ethical behavior. There are lines of structures. Identity gets compromised. Other people, the line managers, typically resort to taking revenge, seeking revenge from their employees, and a lot of people are naturally afraid. And makes a lot of sense. However, embedding ethical standards in day-to-day procedures, around 69% of those respondents said, "Okay, yes, this is a way to go." So these are some of the metrics incorporating ethical standards into the strategy or business plan. This is a paramount which I believe employers can do, and around 50%, 51% of the respondents have said so as well, which is well above 50%, half of the respondents. So I believe this is where it is employers categorically need to start emphasizing. And areas where predominantly support is needed, like I've already emphasized, and I'll continue to do that as well. It always is a top-down approach, but it's of course a bottom-up initiative as well. So with respect to employers, if we talk about, yes, in terms of policy, strategies, procedures, they can be set in. 63% of around respondents have felt that a strong ethical leadership is the way to go. And these are the areas I'll try building on the research recommendations. So this report advises, recommends as well. Uh, if I just quickly move on, and then I'll come back to this slide as well. Some of the research considerations. A well-publicized speak up policy with appropriate anonymity and protection for users. I've already addressed this at length. And then finally, of course, establishing an ethics committee. Now, this is something which might, for an employer perspective, might not seem like for some organizations. I know for sure multinationals have them. I know for sure some of the large organizations have them because they have so many employees. This is something which is inevitable. But a lot of medium-sized enterprises do not see the value. And for those, uh, again, the message is clear that a lot of respondents feel that in order for them to behave in an ethical manner, they need such a committee. Moving on to the research recommendations. So the IESBA principles of integrity, objectivity, the confidentiality, professional behavior, professional competence, and due care, they still hold true. This report advises that there's a need for strong ethical principles and behaviors, and the fact that they'll become more important in this digital age. Some of the action items for professional accountants, for instance, of course, with respect to the report survey, there were certain things which the employers, like strong leadership, ethics committee, an independent channel to report unethical behavior is required. But of course, there's an initiative, and a lot of professional accountants have acknowledged that as well, needs to be taken at a personal level as well. But something which was at a higher risk throughout these digital themes, we discussed cybersecurity, AI, automation, procurement of technology, for instance. These are all areas where professional accountants are at a very high risk of lacking or falling behind in their professional competence. one of the fundamental principles of IESP as well, in order to stay relevant in the ongoing market. So there needs to be a lot of research study. For me, if I just quickly relate on my experience, back in the day when I was starting, for instance, I was offered more traditional roles as well, but I was somehow inclined towards my current line of work because I tried projecting 5 or 10 years ahead of the future. So when I was starting, so I thought, matlab, I felt that my traditional role might not have much of a technology component, and those of the people who will succeed, the ones who have succeed now, and I'm talking, of course, a decade ago, are the ones who were forward looking. Let's say around 2000, in 90s, in 2000, early 2000, they were forward looking. So hence around 2010, 2012, they are at the key leadership positions because they were forward looking. They foresaw, for instance, the need to change, to innovate. And this is something I did a decade ago as well. And I thought, instead of taking on building professional competence around the uh, fundamental or some of the very traditional lines of work, of course that's a necessity. But I chose a much different approach. At the time, I received a lot of criticism as well. There were a lot of opportunities, but never had I had to look back after 2 years when I started seeing the value of my line of work. But it was a very painful process in terms of I actually had to research, learn a lot, because something which I wasn't taught on at a greater length, detail. Because let's be honest, we do not know cybersecurity. As professional accountants, we are not taught AI. We're not taught big data. Even though ACC has taken a lot of initiative in keeping such sessions, virtual sessions, with a lot of leading industry professions. And this is an evolving field, of course, but something which we do not have as part of our curriculum, or was a part of our curriculum before, and something we'll all struggle in. Yeah. But this is not to say that we should give up on it, because in order to stay relevant, it is the need of the hour. Those who have are the ones who, at a pretty young age or pretty early on, gain leadership positions because they have the skills which organizations are looking for. We need to take a strategic view. Of course, we need to evaluate our mechanisms for reporting unethical behavior. Something again I've emphasized earlier as well. Um, One thing I did mention, but not to a sufficient detail, was, of course, from an employer perspective, we need to build controls. We need to build process-related internal controls, and keeping in view the whole the strategic view in sight. So these were some of the recommendations, research recommendations, which the ACCA's report says. And I know I've taken 15, no, in fact 20 minutes above, but I'll open up the floor to question and answers now. Amir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jamshed. I believe the presentation was very thorough, and hopefully the audience must have, taken a few takeaways where they would be going back and, addressing the very of the issue that is of paramount importance around ethics and trust in the current digital age. So I believe we have already sort of overrun the presentation time. If we can quickly move over to the question and answers, you can actually post them to the to the email ID where you would be getting the the certificates from. You can have access to the email ID, and also you can post the questions there, and we'll definitely get back to you on those questions. Here on your screens, I have a little announcement whereby the ACCA, as of now, has this amazing offer whereby if you are not currently on ACCA journey, you would be able to opt in, whereby you would be getting exemptions on your existing qualifications. And this definitely does apply to the chartered accountants who are who are attending and not from ACCA fraternity, but also to other domains whereby you can also join in on the fast track if you are a university graduate in the relevant discipline, particularly accounting and finance. So you definitely have that option whereby you would be able to save up around 200,000 if you are eligible for the 9 exemptions that ACC offers if your qualification matches the requirements. So this is one announcement around the exemptions. Moving forward, we have this amazing program. This is just to sort of give you the top level information around ACCA's um, interventions, whereby we are working towards development of accounting professionals, particularly ACCA fraternity. Um, we have recently launched this 6 digits program where the tagline you are seeing on the screen is realize your true potential. So this is a program which is designed primarily to enhance your capabilities. This is a 100-hour program, and it covers various concepts and domains, including discovery, whereby you also would be working on business cases, and then you would also be refreshing the critical competencies that you would be needing in the professional sphere, and so forth. So you can have more detailed information around this when you would be visiting this specific dedicated URL that is appearing on the screen. So that is that, and I believe thank you once again for all of you who are a part of this session. And we do look forward to your feedback. The feedback link would be definitely be available on the email that you would be receiving once we close the session. I believe that email would also be including the certificates for participation. And we would love to hear from you how we can improve the sessions going forward. So that's it, and I wish you a very good evening. Thank you, Jamshed, once again for joining us and giving us the detailed presentation around ethics and trust in the digital age. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.